Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this weekly press briefing. I think I'm going to begin today with the bilateral meetings that Prime Minister had yesterday, on which I couldn't really give you detailed inputs because it was already late by the time we finished the closing session of the India-Africa Forum Summit yesterday. Secretary West gave you an in-depth picture of the two documents that were adopted yesterday, the political declaration and the India-Africa Framework for Strategic Cooperation. So I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to go straight into the bilaterals that Prime Minister had yesterday with African leaders. As you know, on the 28th, he had 19 bilateral meetings. And yesterday, he had 10 more bilateral meetings. So the total number of bilateral meetings that Prime Minister has had has now reached 29. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you the meetings that are scheduled for today in Hyderabad House. Prime Minister's first bilateral meeting yesterday was with His Majesty King Mohammed VI, the King of Morocco. Prime Minister commended him for his modernist vision and the progress that Morocco has achieved. His Majesty said that Morocco wanted to learn from India's experience. Turning to economic issues, he said Morocco was very attractive for institutional investors. It also had a very large sovereign wealth fund. Prime Minister outlined some of the initiatives the government had taken to attract more FDI and sovereign wealth funds, including the provision of infrastructure bonds. He said that India needed phosphate for fertilizers, and Morocco had an abundance of phosphate, so cooperation in this area would be a win-win partnership. His Majesty said, of course, we welcome India's cooperation in the area of phosphates, but going beyond phosphates, we should also chalk out areas of cooperation in agriculture and in industry. In fact, he suggested the formation of a high-level joint commission to take bilateral relations to a new level. Prime Minister totally agreed with this suggestion. Finally, His Majesty invited Prime Minister to visit Morocco. As you may be aware, the last high-level visit from India to Morocco was by Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1989. Prime Minister said he would definitely consider visiting Morocco. Prime Minister's next meeting was with Dr. Hage G. Geingob, the President of the Republic of Namibia. 89. होगा फिर, correct. Yeah. Prime Minister's next meeting was with Dr. Hage G. Geingob, the President of the Republic of Namibia. Discussions focused on defense, energy, and agriculture. Prime Minister said that our agriculturalists would definitely consider, taking up projects in Namibia. There was also a discussion on UN Security Council reform, with the President of Namibia saying that powerful countries like India should be in the Security Council. Prime Minister's third meeting was with Mr. Abdullah Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Arab Republic of Egypt. This, as you know, was their second meeting in 2 months. They had last met on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly session in New York in September. Prime Minister thanked President Sisi for attending the summit, which he said would have been incomplete without Egypt. President Sisi said that even though the summit was coinciding with parliamentary elections in Egypt, yet he made it a point to be present for this very important occasion. He said that there were very sound historical foundations of the friendship with India, and he wanted to reinforce and develop it and take bilateral relations to a much higher and broader level. He referred to Indian investments in Egypt and said that Egypt would welcome more such joint ventures. He referred to the new Suez Canal as a complete corridor of integrated development and said that numerous industrial zones in Egypt would be very attractive to Indian businesses. He sought closer cooperation with India in the political, economic, security, and defense fields. Prime Minister said we could also assist in agriculture, human resources development, animal husbandry, and dairy. There was a discussion on developments in the Middle East and the need for more active counter-terrorism cooperation. Prime Minister said that we must isolate all forms of terrorism, and in this context, he referred to the need to finalize the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. Prime Minister congratulated President Sisi on Egypt becoming a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council and said that we must work together for UN Security Council reform to obtain permanent seats for Africa and India. Prime Minister referred to the India-Arab League ministerial meeting, which is scheduled to be held in Manama in December, and hoped that the Egyptian foreign minister would also be present for this important meeting. As you are aware, President Sisi, in a goodwill gesture, agreed to the release of 2 long-term Indian prisoners in Egypt who had been in jail for 16 and 22 years. They will be extradited to India under the Transfer of Sentenced Persons Agreement. The next meeting Prime Minister had was with the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Mr. Muhammad Ould Abdulaziz, who thanked the government of India for funding projects in his country relating to, there was a milk factory, drilling for water wells, rural electrification, and clean energy. He welcomed Prime Minister's initiative towards promoting use of solar and clean energy. Mauritania, he said, is a pioneer in this area in its region and would like to collaborate with India. Prime Minister invited him to join the Solar Alliance that he will launch in Paris on the sidelines of the COP21. The President of Mauritania said that his country was rich in iron, gold, copper, and oil, which were available for Indian investment. He sought India's assistance in developing the power sector, which could boost mining activities. He also sought to learn from India's green revolution in the area of agriculture. Finally, and this is important, Mauritania said that it would be opening a mission shortly in New Delhi. And he requested that India should try and set up a similar resident mission in Mauritania. The next meeting Prime Minister had was with the President of the Republic of Mali, Mr. Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, who thanked Prime Minister for India's development assistance and lines of credit. He sought increased assistance for reconstruction and growth of Mali, which has been badly affected by terrorist activities. He sought India's assistance in counter-terrorism. Prime Minister commended Malian efforts to fight terror and to steer the country towards increased growth and offered India's full assistance. The President of Mali said that he would like to return to India on a full bilateral visit. He also invited Prime Minister to visit Mali and said that when he comes, he would especially take him to Timbuktu, which is a cultural heritage site and which the terrorists have been wanting to blow up. The next meeting was with the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Mr. Haile Mariam Desalegn, who said that he had visited India more than a dozen times since he was a professor at a university and thereafter as foreign minister and then as deputy prime minister. His wife had also studied in India. He recalled that India and Ethiopia have a historic relationship and it has always been a very friendly relationship. Ethiopia has emulated Indian democracy and federalism, and entire generations of Ethiopians have been taught by Indian teachers, he said. In terms of the modern partnership, he referred to the 150 Indian companies who are currently active in Ethiopia and said we wanted more. He sought India's assistance in capacity building, agro-processing, pharma, and IT. He also invited Indian investors to take advantage of the huge arable land available in Ethiopia for pulses and oilseed production. Prime Minister said that he would ask an expert team to visit Ethiopia. The next meeting was with the Vice President of the Republic of Angola, Engineer Manuel Domingos Vicente, who referred to the deep historical ties and India's support for Angola's independence. He sought India's assistance in agriculture, IT, renewable energy, traditional energy, medicine, pharma, and other areas. Discussions also focused on cooperation in the oil sector, particularly as the Vice President of Angola was the CEO of Sonangol for 12 years. Sonangol, as you know, is the Angolan company engaged in the oil sector. Prime Minister said that India is working as a buyer of Angolan oil, but we wanted to become a partner. He referred in this context to the recent visit of the chief of ONGC to Angola and the very productive discussions that had been held there. The Vice President said that Angola was favorably inclined to the entry of Indian capital in the oil sector. It was also building a refinery and invited India to participate in the project. He said that Angola was also a major supplier of diamonds and new concessions might be available soon. Prime Minister said that India was one of the largest cutters and polishers of diamonds, but we were sourcing diamonds from third parties. In this context, if we could get access to diamonds directly from Angola, then it would be a win-win situation. The next meeting Prime Minister had was with the Vice President of Tanzania, Mr. Muhammad Gharib Bilal. He congratulated him on the election victory in the polls, which had just been held, in fact, on the day that the Vice President was here. The Vice President sought a further line of credit for a railway line to ease traffic congestion in Dar es Salaam, and he said we could do this under the PPP model. He also sought industrial incubators. Prime Minister informed him that NSIC would be visiting Tanzania in November for a feasibility study on this particular subject. Tanzania also sought cooperation in the fight against terrorism. The Vice President said that the menace of piracy had largely been tackled, but the threat of terrorism loomed large. Prime Minister said that he would be happy to provide training, technology, and intelligence sharing in this particular field. Prime Minister then had a very warm meeting with the President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, who said very proudly that he is a living example of India-Africa cooperation. As you may be aware, he was a civil servant who came to India for capacity building. I'm told he did his MEd from Bhopal, and then he went back to serve Somalia. He then set up an institute in 1998, which is now a full-fledged university with 5,000 students. The President thanked India for its peacekeeping efforts and for the role of the Indian Navy, which had succeeded in controlling piracy off the coast of Somalia. He said terrorism in Somalia was now subsiding and the task of nation building had begun. However, he also referred to the challenges such as recurrent energy shortage and closure of more than 200 factories. Al-Shabaab, which had flourished in ungovernable places, was now in retreat, he said, as the government was setting up federal entities in those areas. He also referred to the trade relationship with India. Last year, he said that there were $250 million worth of exports to India and $400 million worth of imports. But this was conducted largely through informal channels. And he said, perhaps the time had now come for us to formalize trade arrangements. He sought India's support in development of energy, which was necessary to promote industry. And he also sought assistance in the areas of agriculture and fisheries. In the area of maritime security in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, he sought capacity building support and also for setting up vocational educational centers. Prime Minister said that India is always ready to assist Somalia. We had recently trained Somali diplomats in our Foreign Service Institute. 29 minibuses were being delivered to Somalia as part of our assistance package. Somalia, Prime Minister said, had considerable potential, particularly in oil and gas, which was largely untapped. And if the law and order situation could be controlled, then nothing could stop Somalia's development. Prime Minister promised full cooperation in the security sector and offered to send experts. Prime Minister's last bilateral meeting was with the President of the Union of the Comoros, Dr. Ikilulu Dhuinin. There was a discussion on the $42 million line of credit offered by India to Comoros, which is being used for setting up an 18-megawatt power plant in the capital city of Moroni. The President requested more scholarships, particularly for science subjects. Prime Minister said that Comoros was a maritime neighbor. We were ready to assist in all sectors. Many Comoros nationals were coming to India for medical treatment. He said that island nations like Comoros were suffering the most from climate change, and in this context, he invited the Comoros to join the Solar Alliance that he would be launching in Paris. So that is an update on Prime Minister's meetings that were held yesterday. And today, let me tell you the meetings that Prime Minister will be holding. He will meet Mr. Omar Hassan Ahmed al-Bashir, the President of the Republic of Sudan. He will be the first foreign dignitary. Then he will meet the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, followed by the President of the Republic of Madagascar, followed by the Prime Minister of the Republic of Mauritius, Sir Anirudh Jagannath, followed by the Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, and then the Vice President of the Republic of Zambia. Thereafter, he will meet Mr. Salva Kiir, the President of the Republic of South Sudan, followed by the President of the Republic of Senegal, followed by the President of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, followed by the first Vice President of the Republic of Burundi, followed by the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, and his last meeting today would be with Her Excellency Madame Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the President of the Republic of Liberia, whose birthday, as you know, was yesterday, and Prime Minister had publicly congratulated her on that. So that, I think, would round up the Prime Minister's engagement with various African leaders who came for the India-Africa Forum Summit. I'm afraid I cannot brief you on the External Affairs Minister's engagements with the foreign ministers because she is still meeting them. Burundi has just ended, and I believe Mauritius is going on as we speak. So perhaps that will have to wait for another day. But now we can go straight into the Q&A session. Yeah.
गीता के डीएनए सैंपल की रिपोर्ट आपके पास आ चुकी है, क्या शेयर कर सकते हैं उस रिपोर्ट?
नहीं, अभी I have nothing to share with you on this aspect at the moment.
Because the Prime Minister mentioning Solar Alliance for the first time in his speech yesterday, details are not known. Could you share with us some of the details and, you know, out of 107 countries which get the sun for 300 days every year, how many are going to join the
No, I mean, we expect as broad-based a partnership as possible. Prime Minister, as you know, is very passionate about solar energy. He has himself promised to increase the share of renewables in our INDCs to 40%. As you know, we are building 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, which includes 100 of solar. So from that point of view, as you can imagine, solar is a very, very important element as part of our energy mix. And the idea is that those countries which are solar rich, you know, where the sun shines throughout the year, those countries, how can we scale up utilization of solar? What are the kind of technologies that can help us get maximum value out of solar panels, for instance? What are the new technologies coming up on the horizon in terms of solar? So the idea is really to create as broad a platform as possible for all countries to come together and really promote the use of solar and also ensure financing and technology for development in this particular area. More details, unfortunately, I don't have. We ourselves, as the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Sources, which is spearheading this initiative, but at my subsequent briefings, I'll try to get you more information on this. Yeah.
सर, नेपाल को लेकर के जो कुछ दिनों से ऑयल की और बाकी ज़रूरी सामानों की जो सप्लाई रुकी हुई थी, उसकी क्या पोजीशन है? दूसरा, उन्होंने चाइना के साथ में एक ऑयल को सप्लाई का एक एग्रीमेंट उन्होंने किया है, इसके बारे में इंडिया का क्या पक्ष है?
I'll come to your second question first. We have seen these reports. हमने वो reports देखी हैं कि नेपाल ने चीन के साथ एक समझौता पे हस्ताक्षर किए हैं. जैसा कि आप जानते हैं, नेपाल का ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अधिक से अधिक ट्रेड जो है, उनका व्यापार जो है वो भारत के थ्रू होता है. और जहां तक पेट्रोल का मामला है, 70% जो पेट्रोल है नेपाल का, वो तो रक्सौल बीरगंज पॉइंट से ही जाता है. तो ये जो उन्होंने अभी समझौता किया है, ये उस मुद्दे में कैसे मदद कर सकता है, क्योंकि आप भी जानते हैं कि इस समय पेट्रोल की सप्लाई क्यों रुकी हुई है. पेट्रोल की सप्लाई इसलिए रुकी हुई है कि नेपाल का एक सेक्शन, उनके पॉपुलेशन का एक सेक्शन जो है वो उनके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से सहमत नहीं है और वो इस समय रोक लगाए हुए है, वो भारत से सप्लाईज आने नहीं दे रहा है. तो किस प्रकार ये समझौता जो 100% जो अभी भारत से आ रहा है, उसमें से 70% जो रक्सौल बीरगंज से आ रहा है, और रक्सौल बीरगंज जो अभी भी खुल नहीं पा रहा है, उसमें किस तरह मदद करेगा, वो देखने की बात होगी आगे. लेकिन जहां तक जो जनरल प्रश्न आपने पूछा है, तो मैं उसका अंग्रेजी में यही जवाब दूंगा कि नेपाल इंडिया ट्रेड इकोनॉमिक रिलेशंस आर मल्टीफेसेटेड, डाइवर्स, डीप रूटेड, stand on their own merit, and have a natural logic. 2/3 of Nepal's international trade is with India, and bulk of their third country trade passes through India. Nearly half of the foreign investment in Nepal is from India. I reiterate, there is no blockade by India. Obstructions are on the Nepalese side by sections of their own population. The largest border crossing, Raxaul Birganj, which accounts for 70% of our trade, continues to remain closed from their side. So several hundred cargo trucks are still passing daily through those crossing points that are open. Despite providing for and earmarking Nepal's daily POL requirements in full, IOC is able to deliver only about 30% of the allocations on average. केवल 30% ही IOC जो है वो नेपाल पे अभी भेज पा रहा है. We have facilitated airlift of aviation turbine fuel earlier, and this is important. We are ready to facilitate future similar operations and requests. We are also facilitating the rerouting of LPG bullets through those crossing points that are open. सो जैसा कि आप देख रहे हैं, हम अपनी तरफ से पूरी चेष्टा कर रहे हैं कि नेपाल को जो सामग्री पहुंचनी चाहिए वो पहुंचने की हम चेष्टा कर रहे हैं, परंतु जब तक रक्सौल बीरगंज नहीं खुलेगा तब तक जो सबसे बड़ा जो चोक पॉइंट तो वही है, और उसको जब तक नहीं खोलेंगे तब तक बाकी पॉइंट से जितना हो सकता है हम भेजेंगे। बट जैसा कि आप देख रहे हैं 30% इस समय POL जा पा रहा है। माइक।
Do you have any details for us yet on the Prime Minister's upcoming visit to the UK? And a completely unrelated question, do you have a figure for the total amount of money that was spent on the India-Africa summit?
No, I have no answers on both those questions. The UK visit, as you know, these are announced in coordination with the host country. So India and UK will agree as to what is the date on which we will announce the visit, and that is when we will give you details of the visit.
Thank you, sir. This is Venkatesh from Dinamani Tamil Daily, sir. When will the detained fishermen from Sri Lanka will be released? And then when will be the next joint coordinate meeting will take place, sir?
On Sri Lanka, as you know, there are presently 120 Indian fishermen who are detained in Sri Lanka. There are also 36 Sri Lankan fishermen who are detained in India. And, you know, we continue to try for the release through diplomatic channels. So, I mean, that's all I can say at this stage. This is, as you know, a complex issue. It's not a new issue. This has been going on for quite some time. And we continue to work with the government of Sri Lanka to put in place some kind of a mechanism so that we can avoid these things to the extent possible. Srinjoy.
Sir, a few days ago, President Musharraf, former president of Pakistan, made certain statements, and he said that there was an official plan which he helped to sort of clear of sending terrorists into India. So clearly the Pak establishment had a role in this. What is India going to do now, considering this admission has been made?
I mean, we have always, you know, our position on this is very clear. Pakistan must stop using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. And the sooner Pakistan realizes this, the sooner, the faster relations with India, between India and Pakistan can progress. Yeah.
Akanksha, I write for Annapurna Post in Nepal. So the crisis in Nepal seems to be deepening. Is government of India talking to the new government in Nepal, Mr. Olis? And there were talks of the Prime Minister of Nepal making a visit to India. If you could please share details. And sir, if you have any details of what is happening at the border, I would really appreciate.
Well, as I said, I do not have the details of the vehicles which are stuck there, but, you know, it's pretty much what has happened in the past. We are trying to send, you know, 300 to 400 trucks are going, those from the border points that are open. But the main, as I said, the main choke point remains Raxaul Birganj. So that has to open. We understand the talks are going on between the government of Nepal and the United Democratic Madhesi Front, the UDMF. We hope that these talks will be fruitful and lead to an early political settlement. We also hope that such a political resolution of issues facing Nepal will be institutionalized in a manner that would ensure broad-based ownership and acceptance of the Constitution by all sections of society, including by the disaffected agitating forces. As far as engagement with the new government is concerned, you are very well aware that Mr. Kamal Thapa, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, came within a week of assuming office. We had good discussions. He acknowledged that there is a political problem in Nepal which needs a political solution. And we continue to urge the political parties in Nepal to work out some kind of an accommodation with disaffected sections of their own population. The new president of Nepal has been elected, as you know, and our president has already congratulated her. So we maintain, I mean, our relationship with the political forces in Nepal, with the ruling party in Nepal continues, but at the same time, there has to be an acknowledgement of the problem which exists on the Nepalese side and efforts to address this in a sincere manner.
सर अगर आप मिस्र में से जो दो इंडियन छोड़े जाएंगे जेल से उसके बारे में बता सकें कि क्यों वो पिछले 16 साल या 22 साल से जेल में
नहीं, वो उनके ऊपर कुछ चार्जेस थे, तो देखिए हम उसकी बात नहीं कर रहे हैं कि वो उनको जो है अरेस्ट किया गया था, जो जेल की गई है वो सही है या गलत है, उस पर हम टिप्पणी नहीं कर रहे हैं, किसी कंट्री के जुडिशियल प्रोसेस पे हम नहीं कर रहे हैं। हमने सिर्फ ये कहा था कि एक 16 वर्ष से जेल में है, एक 22 वर्ष से जेल में है, और हमारा एक ट्रांसफर ऑफ सेंटेंस पर्सन्स का एग्रीमेंट है इजिप्ट के साथ। तो उसके तहत हमने दिसंबर 2014 में अनुरोध किया था कि क्या इनको अब छोड़ा जा सकता है, क्योंकि ऑलरेडी ये इतने वर्षों से इजिप्ट की जेलों में हैं, क्या इनको छोड़ा जा सकता है, क्या इनको इंडिया भेजा जा सकता है। तो उस पे जो राष्ट्रपति हैं सिसी साहब, उन्होंने कल एज अ गुडविल जेस्चर कहा कि हमने फैसला ले लिया है, हम इन दोनों को इस एग्रीमेंट के तहत इनको हम रिहा कर रहे हैं। रिहा कर रहे हैं इजिप्ट से, इंडिया भेज रहे हैं ना। यहाँ पे हाँ, माने इन द सेंस कि उस सजा जो पूरी करेंगे और जो भी उसके जो मोडालिटीज हैं उसके बेसिस पे वो होगा। गीता मोहन। अच्छा, चारू फर्स्ट।
No, I mean, should I? Yeah. Just in the meeting between the Prime Minister and President Sisi, did either of them also invite the other one to visit for a bilateral visit anytime?
No, I don't think there was a reference. But these things are also, I mean, it's not as if that you have to extend the invitation in a face-to-face meeting. These things are also handled through diplomatic channels.
And Prime Minister, you talked about how the Prime Minister said that, it would have been incomplete without President Sisi attending. And President Sisi referred to the historic relations between India and Egypt. Did he specifically refer to the NAM or to Prime Minister Nehru and President Nasser's?
No, not in the bilateral meeting with Prime Minister. Yeah, Geeta.
Two questions, Vikas. One is Pakistan sought re-election at the UNHRC and was booted out, or was not re-elected. Just wanted to know the kind of role the mission would have played, the Indian mission, and also comments on the fact that international community more aware of human rights violations now in Pakistan. Secondly, Chota Rajan case, has Chota Rajan got consular access, one, and whether if there is a confusion between extradition and deportation, what is it that the Ministry of External Affairs is looking at, given that the ambassador has said that they are in talks and the headquarters will decide what needs to be done?
Well, only one question is permitted, but I'll make an exception in your case. On your first question on Pakistan not winning election to the Human Rights Council, well, this is an election. This was an election, and the result is obvious. And really, there is no need for me to comment on the outcome of the election. We all know what has happened. So as far as the issue of human rights violations in Pakistan is concerned, again, that is something that is well known and does not need any comment by me. On the Chota Rajan case, we are in touch with the Ministry of Home Affairs, and Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of External Affairs are working together to ensure that we bring him back to India as early as possible. Akhilesh.
So coming back to Nepal, can you give us a signal that how much aid and assistance we give to Nepal? And Nepal, seeing the Nepal-India friendship, long-term friendship, don't you think that Chinese entry into Nepal in such a situation will hamper our relations with Nepal or our influence zone in Nepal?
As far as assistance is concerned, $1 billion had already been given to Nepal earlier, and $1 billion was announced at the time of the earthquake, as you know, when External Affairs Minister represented India at the reconstruction conference. So total aid would become then $2 billion, which is, as you know, a very substantial package that we give to Nepal. But more than that, our relationship with Nepal is not based on aid. I mean, as we have said repeatedly, roti beti ka rishta hai. It is a relationship which is, we have civilizational roots, we have cultural links, we have religious links, we have all kinds of links with Nepal. Millions of Nepalese, live and work in India. So and we have open border with them. So the relationship, goes beyond transactional terms. As I said, it's a very deep-rooted historical friendship. And this thing about China, I had mentioned in an earlier press conference that we would certainly be concerned about any growth of anti-India sentiment in Nepal. And we hope that this situation, which has been caused entirely by problems on the Nepalese side, will be resolved at the earliest, and our relationship will once again, return to its original status. That I will have to check. I'll have to check on that. तो पेंशन तो हम देते ही हैं. हाँ, हमारा एक पेंशन ऑफिस है, पूरे हमारे दूतावास में एक पेंशन ऑफिस है.
पेंशन की सप्लाई जो मतलब जो डिसबर्समेंट है उसको कुछ एक वहाँ पर आया है कि वो उन्होंने भारत ने रोक दी है वहाँ पर इस तरह.
नहीं, मैंने तो ऐसा नहीं सुना है कि हम गोरखाओं के पेंशन हमने रोक दी है.
हाँ,
ये आपने कहाँ से सुना है?
ये रिपोर्ट छपी हुई है पेपर में.
नहीं, मुझे तो बिल्कुल सत्य नहीं लग रही रिपोर्ट पर, बट मैं वेरीफाई करूंगा. या सुवजीत.
So, in President Sisi's meeting, since Egypt is, a member of the United for Consensus.
No, Egypt is not a member of the United for Consensus. Okay. It cannot be because it is bound by the African Azulini Consensus.
But did President Sisi offer any support for India's candidature?
No, as I said, in a 15-minute meeting, you do not have a detailed discussion on UN Security Council reform. But as I said, the fact of the matter is Egypt has also signed on to the declaration that has been issued at the end of the India-Africa Forum Summit, where both sides have noted each other's aspirations to be in the Security Council.
Secondly, in this Somalia PM's meeting, you mentioned that we have agreed to send experts to counter terrorism.
No, as I said, we are ready to assist in the security sector, and if Somalia has needs for specific expertise, then Prime Minister said we are happy to provide you assistance in those areas. But this is all subject to further discussions and, specific requirements. Yeah. Okay.
सर, गीता के वापसी के बाद एक बच्चे को लेकर आवाज पाकिस्तान के भी एनजीओ से उठी थी, जो कि भोपाल में उम्मीद नाम के एक एनजीओ के पास है, रहमान. क्या कोई ऑफिशियल
रहमान या रमजान?
रमजान. क्या कोई ऑफिशियल डिमांड पाकिस्तान से आपकी तरफ आई है? और दूसरा सवाल, आपने कहा है कि गीता की डीएनए रिपोर्ट के बारे में जानकारी नहीं देंगे, लेकिन क्या
नहीं, मेरे पास है नहीं जानकारी. अच्छा, तो मैं कहां से दे सकता हूं?
क्या केवल इतना कंफर्म कर सकते हैं क्या रिपोर्ट वाकई एम्स ने आपको भेज दी?
मेरे पास इसके बारे में कुछ भी अभी जो है जानकारी नहीं आई है जो मैं आपके साथ साझा कर सकता हूँ. मेरे पास कुछ नहीं आया है.
रमजान,
मैं आपको रमजान के बारे में बताता हूँ. रमजान का केस जो है गीता के केस से काफी फर्क है, क्योंकि रमजान जो हैं पहले पाकिस्तान गए थे, फिर उनके पिताजी वहाँ से बांग्लादेश चले गए और दूसरी शादी कर ली, और फिर रमजान जो हैं बांग्लादेश से होते आते किसी तरह से भोपाल पहुँच गए, और अब भोपाल में वो एक एनजीओ के पास हैं. तो इसमें सर्वप्रथम तो पाकिस्तान को रमजान की नेशनैलिटी वेरीफाई करनी पड़ेगी, और हमने सुना है कि वो एनजीओ ने शायद पाकिस्तान दूतावास के साथ संपर्क स्थापित किया है. इसकी मैं इंडिपेंडेंट जानकारी मेरे पास नहीं है, लेकिन यदि पाकिस्तान उनकी नेशनैलिटी कंफर्म कर देता है और कहता है कि हाँ ये पाकिस्तानी नेशनल है, तो फिर देन द डेक्स आर क्लियर फॉर हिम टू गो टू पाकिस्तान. फिर वो पाकिस्तान जा सकते हैं. विनीत, नो, फर्स्ट आई थिंक समबडी देयर, यू वांट, ओके, हाँ, विनीता.
Vikas, on this unified African forces that are going to combat terrorism and all sort of problems in Africa, are they going to set up some office in Delhi also? Or I mean, besides capacity building and other part of training in the peacekeeping?
No, I don't think there is any proposal for them to set up an office in Delhi. The proposal is for African peacekeepers to be trained in our peacekeeping institutions, particularly the Center for UN Peacekeeping. And that is a commitment that Prime Minister had outlined in the meeting, in the leadership summit that President Obama had hosted in New York. No, this is training for trainers. So you train the trainers who then go back and then train more. That is the idea. Snigdha.
We've seen that India has offered 10 billion as a line of credit.
10 billion.
$10 billion, a line of credit. But what is the African side of partnership? What does Africa have to offer to India through this summit?
No, look, I mean, as I said, this was not a transactional summit. We give you 10 billion, you give us this, you give us that. The idea was, the whole purpose of the summit was to have India and the whole of Africa on one platform, which had never happened before. Earlier, as you know, we were governed by the Banjul formula. Only a limited number of countries were invited. Now the whole of Africa was with India on one platform. They have signed 2 documents which expresses the future contours of the partnership that India and Africa will have. And, you know, Africa is rich in minerals. Africa has a very young demographic profile. Africa has certain needs. We have certain strengths. We have certain needs. Africa has certain strengths. And the idea is how the two can be meshed together and it become a win-win partnership for both sides. Human resource development is one particular area where India has a certain expertise. A whole generation of Africans has been, trained in Indian institutions. Many of the African leaders have benefited from India's, vocational training and higher education institutions. So these are the kinds of areas, capacity building, human resource development, where medicines, pharma, 80% of antiretrovirals in Africa now come from India. So those are the kind of areas where we want to deepen the partnership, and we want to broaden the partnership to cover new areas. Blue economy, for instance, was not there in the previous two summit declarations, because this is an emerging area where we believe India and Africa have much to offer each other. So the whole idea of this summit was to get India and Africa on the same page on a whole host of issues. When it comes to international issues, whether it is trade issues pertaining to WTO, whether it is climate change issues pertaining to the COP21, whether it is security and international relations issues pertaining to reform of the United Nations and institutions of global governance, it is important for India and Africa to have a common position and a common perspective. And I think that is where this summit has helped. Kaushik Saab.
I was little curious about whether Prime Minister accepted the Malian President invitation to visit Timbuktu.
No, he did not accept. He said कि अगर Malian President invited him, and he said जब आप Mali आएंगे, when you come to Mali, I would definitely like to take you to Timbuktu, which is a cultural heritage site.
And if yes, would it be the first Indian Prime Minister's visit to Timbuktu?
Well, if it happens, I would imagine. I don't recall, but as I said, I'll have to check. One can never be sure, maybe some Indian leader went sometime in the past. Yeah. Is there some song also with Timbuktu, isn't it? Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned that Somalia had praised the role of the Indian Navy. Is there any proposal from Somalia for any presence of the Indian Navy on the...
Indian Navy is already present in the Gulf of Aden. We have provided escorts to more than 3,500 ships.
Correct.
And that is why, the high-risk area, as you know, has been removed now. It has been shifted back to 65 degrees east from 78 degrees east. And that's largely because of the very coordinated patrolling by the Indian Navy and, of course, the coordinated response of the international community. So the Indian Navy has, as I said, done a fantastic job in combating piracy. Yes. We caught a mothership also. We foiled several piracy attempts also.
No, but many other navies also operate in that region, including the Chinese PLA.
Correct.
But what I was asking is that have they suggested any increased role for the Indian Navy in
I think they are
maritime
quite happy.
security? Because you mentioned that there was some talk about maritime.
There, as I said, those who ask for, fast coastal boats and things like that, those kinds of requests we are always ready to provide. But that particular discussion did not happen in this particular meeting.
Just a small clarification on Ethiopia. You said the talks were with the president, sir?
No, with the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Kalol. Okay, but others may not be able to.
Just wanted to know, like in African continent has lots of political issues among themselves. I mean, different countries have different sorts of political disputes and boundary issues and etc. Did any of these countries at any point during the summit or bilaterals ask India's intervention?
No.
For example, DRC or Libya or...
I was there in all the meetings. Yeah. I was there in 19 meetings. I'll be there in 10 more meetings today. Nothing like that was...
But, I mean, don't you think it's a little unusual? Because, India has always been a votary for freedom, forces of freedom and forces of decolonization or, end of extremism, since Africa has so much of extremism in different parts of Africa.
No, but as you know very well, counter-terrorism cooperation featured in a big way in most of the meetings.
Yeah, I'm talking about intervention from Indian side.
In what?
Experts or maybe...
No, for what? For resolving their boundary disputes?
Security issues.
No, as I said, counter-terrorism cooperation did figure in a big way, security sector cooperation, and Prime Minister, as I said, was very open to these suggestions and said that, if you have specific proposals in this particular sector, because we also believe that terrorism has to be countered, in every way imaginable. All forms of terrorism are reprehensible and they need to be countered in a very active manner, and the best way is greater international cooperation. So Prime Minister is very open to security sector cooperation in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of provision of experts, in terms of technology, cyber security, all these issues, we are open to these ideas. Okay. No. Prime Minister's bilaterals begin at 4:30, so where will be the time?
सर, एक की सेक्टर हेल्थ रहा है जिसको लेकर तमाम देशों के साथ बातचीत हुई है। स्वास्थ्य मंत्री नड्डा की भी बातचीत आज हुई है। एड्स को महामारी के तौर पर माना जाता है अफ्रीका में, 2030 तक समाप्त करने की बात हुई है। किस तरह से हेल्थ को लेकर टाई अप इंडिया का हुआ, और क्या एड्स के अलावा बाकी कुछ बीमारियां भी हैं जिसको समाप्त करने के लिए भारत कोई ऐड दे रहा है या फिर उसको कोई?
नहीं, इबोला के लिए तो आपको पता ही है, $12 मिलियन हमने दिए थे जब इबोला का आउटब्रेक हुआ था अफ्रीका में। और एड्स में भी हम पूरी प्रयास कर रहे हैं। हमारा नैको ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो है वो उसमें कार्यरत है, और भारत की प्राइवेट कंपनीज जो हैं, मैंने जैसा कि बताया कि कई अफ्रीकन देशों में 80% से ज़्यादा जो एंटी रेट्रोवायरल जो एड्स के ट्रीटमेंट इलाज में काम आती हैं, वो भारत ही निर्माण कर रहा है, भारत से ही वो मैन्युफैक्चर होके जा रही हैं। तो भारत का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है अफ्रीका की जो फाइट है अगेंस्ट एड्स। और जितने भी प्राइवेट एनजीओज हैं जैसे मेडिसिन सॉन्स फ्रंटियर वगैरह, उन सब ने सराहना की है भारत की, और अनुरोध किया है कि ये निरंतर जारी रहना चाहिए। दबाव में नहीं आना चाहिए हमें वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज के कि ये कंपल्सरी लाइसेंसिंग ना हो, क्योंकि ये पब्लिक हेल्थ के लिए आवश्यक है। Yes, I mean, so far the pattern is one in India, one in Africa. As you know, the first one was in Delhi, the second in Addis Ababa, the third back in Delhi. So the fourth one should technically be in Africa. No, I think now this is the new formula. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, now that Prime Minister said in his closing statement that you have agreed that this is the new format of our engagement, and my expectation is that this particular format will now continue. Venue, as I said, it's 5 years down the line, so it has yet to be decided. I mean, I cannot, how can I say? I mean, it could be Addis Ababa, it could be Cairo, it could be any other. There are 54 countries in Africa. I mean, how can I say? There has to be, this will be a part of a partnership. One particular country will have to offer and we'll have to accept. And on that basis, this will go ahead. That's what I think. I mean, as I said, I mean, I'm not the expert on this, but I would imagine that the next one should be in Africa. Yes. Timbuktu, okay. Noted. Okay, thank you very much. No, not that I know of.